So that's what happens when you load your resume into ChatGPT and say, write an intro for you.
That's great.
So apologize for how annoying that was. Didn't realize what it would sound like when it was read out loud. So I've got here a QR code, and if you scan that with your camera, you will be able to get a link, a hyperlink, to this presentation. And in this presentation, there will be hyperlinks that you'll want to review later. I'll come back to this at the end, so in case you didn't get a chance to grab the QR code at the beginning, we can get it later. So why PixInsight? And that's really a good question. I started with Photoshop probably in 1997, and I've had a copy of Photoshop ever since. I'm going to turn this down a little bit. Feels like it's overmodulated. Is that better? Okay. All right, so using Photoshop for 30 years, or 20-some years, I was pretty comfortable with Photoshop. And then in 2020, I learned about stacking photos and increasing the signal-to-noise ratio using Deep Sky Stacker. Jeremy Bummer, who's not here today, is the one who taught me what Deep Sky Stacker was. And then I started looking into how to get better at the process. That's when I found Nico Carver's channel on YouTube and found out that you can take a picture of the Andromeda Galaxy with nothing but a camera and a tripod. And again, mind blown. And that was really the start of my last 3 years of experience here. So, the more I looked into YouTube channels during the pandemic, I probably watched 60,000 hours of YouTube channels in astrophotography, backyard stuff. I started seeing a lot of PixInsight videos. And the images that I was seeing on the screen were really amazing, like Hubble quality images. And I was like, so I need to look into this PixInsight. And so the more I looked into it, the more I learned that PixInsight was actually developed and written for astrophotography. Not just for photography finishing like Photoshop, but actually used with scientific algorithms and processes to process specifically astrophotography. So like the intro said, just over 2 years of practice, and I'm still very much a beginner in PixInsight, because PixInsight has, I consider it an endless learning curve. It's got thousands of ways to do things, and I've just dipped my toe into the ones that I'm comfortable with. I'm going to show some of those to you today. The one thing about PixInsight, it comes from Spain, and there is a completely different language, and I don't know if they use Google Translate or what, but if you're used to Microsoft, this gives you a really good idea of the difference in the way it talks about its own tools. So if you were to have an inexistent record creation in Microsoft, that would just be new. Existent record in memory loading, that is open. Record unit from memory unloaded. This is a meme, by the way, so this is like exaggeration and it's supposed to be funny. So just try to laugh very fun. Write to storage device, save. Write to storage device with different identification, save as. So it goes on and on. And I found it extremely funny because it's very frustrating when you first get into PixInsight and you're like doing these deconvolution and linear transfer, like string change, like all these different terms of just not just sharpening or contrast. So this year I saw a PBS Nova episode where they were talking about how they colorized the James Webb Space Telescope images. And while I was watching it, I noticed the screen looked very familiar. And sure enough, they were using PixInsight. So the raw data that comes down from JWST, you can download as FIX files, and PixInsight opens those files. You can process, you can process JWST data in serial or anything that processes FIX files, but Specifically, the JWST team was processing the Tarantula Nebula in PixIn site. And I was really excited about that. There's a hyperlink in the presentation. It's a 3-minute video, it's worth watching. So what they pulled out, the data when they combined those 4 channels is just mind-blowing. And they talk about the difference in the thin line between science data and artistic data, and the ability to artistically demonstrate the science data behind it. So, what can a beginner in PixInsight do? I produced these images and printed them out, and feel pretty happy about them, even just as a very early beginner in PixInsight. So there's a hyperlink to the Instagram page. And then this year I was extremely fortunate enough to have an image of the Orion Nebula selected as NASA's astronomy picture of the day. And I took 2-second images of the core and was able to pull out the stars of the trapezium while still completely stretching and exposing the rest of the image data there. I was really happy with that image and extremely happy with it after it was selected. So there's some add-ons that you can get with PixInsight. The Easy Processing Suite is a free add-on that I highly recommend. StarNet 2, which was an add-on, you can do it just at a command line. You can add it on to Serial. You can add it into PixInsight. We'll use it today. And then there's paid add-ons from RC Astro. Blur Exterminator is an automatic convolution. It's an AI-built deconvolution tool, and I really like it. It helps with star shapes, and it also helps estimate the detail that should be in the picture. And Noise Exterminator, I don't know, I took the free demo of it, and I liked it, but I already had Topaz denoise, so I was happy enough with Topaz denoise that I used in Photoshop that I didn't spend the money for the Noise Exterminator. So in this slide deck, there will be a link to a Google Drive with these three files. So these 2 files are going to do some narrowband channel combination and then also processing. So you're going to get 2 for 1 tonight, and so it's going to be worth twice what you paid for this presentation. Okay, that's again, you got the chuckle part. All right. So what this is NA is North American Nebula, and then it's sulfur 2, oxygen 3, and hydrogen alpha. And so those are narrowband filters that I have on my equipment. My equipment looks a lot like this tripod here with a 72mm scope and a red Canon ZWO camera on the back with an autofocuser, a guide scope, and a guide camera, and of course an ASI Air Pro. I've got a filter wheel that changes the filters for me from luminance, red, blue, green, and then SHO, sulfur, hydrogen, and oxygen. And so here is a similar picture to what we showed with the JWST data. This is my data of the North American Nebula, and this is hydrogen, oxygen, and this is sulfur. And you can see there's a lot more contrast in the sulfur. And in this region, the sulfur is extremely important. And then this is a quick channel combination. This is before we really processed it. This is an auto stage. So I'm going to do a beginner workflow. I gotta be honest with you, I probably have a different workflow every time I sit down in front of my computer. And I very rarely start and finish a post-processing just in PixInsight. I many times take it to Photoshop, maybe do something that I'm more comfortable with in Photoshop, then bring that TIFF image back and finish it on a couple of processes in PixInsight. Today I'm not going to talk about stacking in PixInsight. There are plenty of videos out there on the weighted batch pre-processing, and it is, I think, really good. It's maybe not the fastest way to stack, but I like the idea that I can load all of my files, my darks, my flats, my flat darks, and my lights, and then tell it just to do it, and it dumps it into a directory for me. And I follow Adam Block's fast track learning. When it comes to that, cool if you get a chance to go to Adam Block's website. There's a link at the end of this presentation to that. So these are some things that I picked out for today, and I'm going to just jump into Dixon's site. So Dixon site is loaded. There's a couple of different ways to open files. You can go file, open, just like any other document. You can have a file manager open, and you can drag your documents if you know where your folder is. You can drag your documents onto the workplace and just drop them, and then it will pop them up. Or another way I like to do it is when you just have an empty workspace, it's just double-clicking a blank spot, and it opens up the open menu. So that comes in handy when you're in the middle of something and you need another file open, and you've got a little spot over here, you can just double-click it and it pops up that open. So I'm going to grab the SHO files. Now I'm going to go ahead and open everything that's going to be found in processes. And in the processes, there are organized places to find stuff that I had never learned how to use. And so I just memorized the stuff in alphabetical order. It goes to the very top, and it gives you all the processes in alphabetical order. So if you remember what tool you want to use, you can always find it in alphabetical order. And that's the way I find everything with maybe two options I might know where are on the left. So the first thing I want to do is pull up a screen transfer function, and it's going to have the auto stretch tools for us. I've also got a shortcut to this atomic symbol, and that is the auto stretch. So when you get the auto stretch, you see that it does that histogram curve stretching that Nico showed earlier this morning. You highlight the next window, and you get that one auto stretched. And then, so this is hydrogen alpha data. And the cool thing that you can do in Dixon site is grab two images. These are already registered together, so if I put one on top of the other, I should be able to see the same stars, just in the different filters. But I don't have it zoomed in just right, so if I use my mouse wheel, maybe I can get it close, but I could never get it perfect. So you can drag this little tab and drop it on top of the other little tab, and then you have both views exactly the same as the first one you grabbed. And then if you put one on top of the other, and they were the last two windows that were active, you can hit Control page down and actually blend between the two images. And I found that to be very useful when you're trying to find a source of noise or even something that just looks weird. If you can blend between a couple of images, you can really kind of start to help yourself troubleshoot. And blinking is a term that I learned through Dixon site. It's something that is something that NASA's been doing for years. And we'll go to that process now. Process, and how do you find it? Well, it starts with the letter key. And I'm going to open some files here. These are individual 300-second subs. And I'll show you what blinking looks like. Hopefully these are before they're registered, so you'll see the stars move around a little bit. And what you want to do is find the images here that maybe have out of focus or poor tracking or guiding, oblong stars, or a cloud. And if we scroll down on each one, you can kind of see this is my dithering, making it jump around. And if I zoom back out, and then just hit the play button, you can see it move around. Now, one really cool thing we can do with the blend function is I found an asteroid once because I had something that was in every single exposure that was moving. And then once I registered those, I was able to actually keep the stars steady and make a movie of just the asteroid movement. So Blink automatically does a string transfer, so it does an auto stretch, but if you load in multiple filters, they might not be the same intensity. So you have to hit the second button to cause them, the letters are really small, compute auto STF for the current image and apply the computed STF to all images. So you can do that, and then you can also apply an automatic histogram transformation to all images. So sometimes I've noticed that like maybe my red, blue, and green look good, but my luminance are too bright if I start with red, blue, and green in the blink function. But a lot of times I just blink each filter individually, so it doesn't matter. So that was the blink. And we've talked about auto stretch. Nico talked about background extraction, and I'm going to talk about background extraction here as well. So I'm going to do a dynamic background extraction. It's very similar to what we saw in Serial. I'm going to start with the hydrogen layer. And so background extraction is one of the tools that I actually know where it is, because it actually is in background extraction. But it's normally dynamic background extraction, or you can do automatic background extraction. Sometimes automatic background extraction can get away from it. If you lower the intensity in the polynomial down, you can kind of do it in steps. And Luke Monaco's YouTube channel, he does it in 1, then 3, then 5, as steps rather than just starting at 5. But I'll do a dynamic one here. And so you have to highlight the image that you want to do the dynamic background stretch to. You left click on it, and then I normally have a large monitor at the house that I have this computer connected to, so I apologize for taking my glasses off and getting close here. So image target correction, target image correction. I'm going to tell it to subtract, and I'll replace. But I also want to not discard the background model. I want to show you guys what the background model looks like, so you know what's happening. So you want to pick a couple of locations where you think the background is. This field of view is actually almost all nebulous, so it's really hard to do this one. But I want to show you the process anyway. You can tell it to sample generate, 10 samples per row. But again, there are so many locations that are heavy nebula, I'm going to pick it. And this is an extremely high pixel image. This is 9,000 pixels wide. So I'm going to make a really big box here so it averages out stars if I accidentally grab a star. So I'm going to make a 125 pixel box. And then when I pick a location, I can see a big green box. And I'm just trying to find places that might not be nebulosity, but I'm telling you, everything in here is nebulosity. So this is more or less just an example. All right, so I think that's good. I'm going to drag this little triangle off onto my desktop, and I'm going to leave that process up because I'm going to use those same sample points for my other filters, and I'll show you how to do that. So we're going to hit the green check mark. And so it did something. And this is our background. Now it looks black because it's not stretched. So if I auto stretch it, you can see it made one of those background models based on the square that I put up there. It said, we think that this background has some gradient to it, and we're going to subtract this gradient from your picture. And you'll see that our picture now looks different. I'm going to close dynamic background extraction so I can get rid of those squares. If I undo and redo, you see that it increased the contrast a little bit, almost like there was a film or a background gradient that it removed. So I like that. I'll minimize this one, get rid of this background, and then highlight this sulfur data, and then double click that process, and look, it already picked up. Now, in this case, these squares are going to pick up black, and it's going to think that that background needs to be extracted. And maybe I should crop this, do a dynamic crop before we even start. But I'm not going to for today. I mean, it's quite possible that that could cause a problem, but we'll try. let's see what the background model looked like. I always like to look at the background model. So this is what the model looked like for it. And does it kind of sound really? So before and after, I almost don't think it helped anything. So I'm going to leave it as before. And we'll do it with oxygen. I'm going to pull these squares down off of that black registration artifact. So it's got a nice model here. And if you notice that model, let me undo that and redo it because I like to talk about that model for just a second. Oxygen 3, even though it's very narrow band, it's 3 nanometers, I still pick up light pollution gradient. So the moon might have been out in like that, grab this data, and I might have some glow from that. So let me cancel that and redo it. Just to show you that background model, because I got rid of it too quick. So you see it's a lot brighter down here. That very well could be the city glow from the backyard, or it could be where the moon was in the sky. I don't remember. But let's look at the before and after. Almost no difference on that one for some reason. Maybe I have it wrong. Okay. So the next thing that I want to do, these are still linear data, so they're very unstretched. But hydrogen alpha data is the brightest thing. Hydrogen is the most common substance in the universe. And so hydrogen alpha is almost always the strongest signal when you're doing narrowband data. And so when you do an auto stretch, that makes up for it. But when you try to do a channel combination and you've got weak oxygen and weak sulfur, the green hydrogen alpha can really overpower it. So I'm going to do a linear fit function, and I'll show that. So there's the hydrogen alpha. I'm going to do a process linear fit. And my reference data is going to be the hydrogen alpha. And I'm going to match the other two to it. Hello? Okay, so I don't know, maybe I turned it sideways or not talking into it properly. All right, so I selected the hydrogen alpha as the reference data. Set that. Well, I missed it here somehow. I'll try to just talk loud or road mic it. Is this on? Okay, you might have to turn that up a little. Okay, so what we're doing is the linear fit, and this is where I'm going to make the sulfur and the oxygen as strong a signal pixel-wise as the hydrogen. So I pick the hydrogen as my reference data, and I'm going to drag this triangle onto my sulfur. And it looks like it made it really bright, but that's because we already had an automatic screen transfer based on the way it was before. So if we undo that with F12 and then redo a screen transfer, you'll see that it's just fine. But now it's actually raised the base. It's actually, changed the bottom level for us, and it's done it mathematically. Is that going to work now? Okay, good. Now we're going to do the same thing for oxygen, and it took a second, so let me just drop it and we can talk all to it. Once we do the linear fit, I'm going to do a channel combination. I'm going to use the Hubble palette for my channel combination. I'm going to take the S, H, and O and put it into the R, G, and B channels. So S being sulfur is the longest wavelength, and red is the longest wavelength in our visible spectrum. I'm going to put the hydrogen alpha, which is between sulfur and oxygen as far as wavelengths go. I'm going to put that in the green, which is between green, which is between red and blue, and then I'm going to put oxygen in blue. And that is how the Hubble palette works. So that process is finished. I'm going to go to process, channel combination. And here, there's a couple ways to do this. You can drag these tabs where you want them. So this is hydrogen, and I know I want that in the green. See how I just dropped it in there. You can also use this menu tool, and it picks an open view. And so I can say I want sulfur there in the red. Click OK, and then I can say here I want the oxygen. And click OK. And at this point, sometimes I forget whether I want a global apply or apply. I'm going to hit apply, and it's obviously the wrong one. So I'll pick global apply. And so now we have a new image that is still fairly linear. If I do an auto stretch on it, it looks like a Hubble palette image already. Now we can do a couple of additional post-processing steps to get it to the way we want to share it with friends and family. So this is where I really like Blur Exterminator, because it does a couple of really nice things as far as managing these stars. These stars that are loaded, there's a couple of different ways to do star reduction. Blur Exterminator itself actually tames the halo of stars quite well, and I've started to like the size and the outcome of the stars with Blur Exterminator. So let's run Blur Exterminator on and see what happens. It's very green. You'll notice that, again, hydrogen is still the strongest signal, but we'll manage the green here in a minute. So let's see what Blur Exterminator does to the process. All processes, Blur Exterminator. And I'm just going to use the default settings here. But I mean, already you're seeing some really cool dark nebulas, LDN 935, and the Cygnus Wall. I can't get enough of this area of the sky. Every time I shoot it, I see those subs come in on the iPad or the iPhone, and I'm just excited every time I get a new 5-minute sub. While working on this data is when I really learned that that dark area that is in the North American Nebula is not a void where you're seeing stars through it, but it is a dark nebula that is blocking out stars that are behind it, and also blocking out oxygen and hydrogen that are behind it. So it's really neat to start looking at this data in different ways, sometimes changing the orientation, the rotation, helps you see things in different ways. And you know, a lot of times I'll go on an AstroBin and look for other pictures of a target that I'm after and see how somebody's cropped it, how they've captured it, maybe what they've brought out in their post-processing. And I might try to even bring up their image next to my image and see if I can do some of the same things. And I'll get into that at the end of this presentation. But here we are with Blur Exterminator completed. If I undo it and redo it, when you first look at it, you're like, it didn't do anything. But when you do the undo, you can see how much more bloated the stars are. So it took some of the star color